Good afternoon, and mahalo for joining our call today. My name is Michelle Kauhane. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Impact Officer at the Hawaii Community Foundation. My job is to serve as your moderator for today as we kick off our AO series. AO literally means a call and response, which is truly the essence of the dialogue that we hope to capture in today's webinar as we bring you inside the recovery of Maui. That means we really want to hear from you. Be sure that you submit your questions using our Q&A button, and we will get to as many of your questions as we can at the end of our discussion. Our intention with this webinar and the entire AO series is to give you unfiltered access to the experts, decision makers, and leaders on the ground, so you'll be more informed about the impacts, the needs, and the opportunities for change in our community. For those of you who may be new to the Hawaii Community Foundation, we're a 107-year-old organization with a vision to create an equitable and vibrant Hawaii in which all our island communities thrive. We're working to address the root causes of our state's most difficult challenges, partnering with government leaders, nonprofit organizations, and community members in communities across Hawaii to create systems change. Today, we will be hearing from three speakers who have been pivotal in the recovery effort: Governor Josh Green, our Mayor Richard Bisson from Maui, and a community leader from Lahaina, Archie Kalepa. But before we get started, I'd like to bring forward our CEO and President, Micah Kane, to welcome you and to share a little bit about HCF's current happenings with the Maui Strong Fund as a way to offer some context to our speakers and how we're working together. Micah?
Thank you, Michelle. Well, first and foremost, on behalf of the Hawaii Community Foundation, mahalo to everyone who is on this webinar for their support of the people in place of Maui. We made a call out, as Michelle said, in AO, as we say in Hawaii, and you really responded. You showed your aloha, you showed your care, and we are so appreciative. We have people on this webinar from around the world, from Japan, from all across the continental United States, as well as Canada. We have people from our own backyard here in Hawaii who have been also so supportive of the people in place of Maui. And so on behalf of our organization, I want to thank you for your support. You know, your financial support has enabled the Maui Strong Fund to make a significant impact on the recovery of Maui. The people on our screen today, Governor Josh Green, Mayor Rick Bisson, Archie Kalepa, have worked very tirelessly in coordination with us. The actions that we took were strategic. They were thought out to leverage every dollar and every effort to make sure that we made the best use of the resources you provided us. And we're very, very grateful again for the support you gave us. After calling the mayor on the evening prior to August 8th, we activated the Maui Strong Fund. At that time, we pivoted all 90 employees to support Maui, and you responded to our call out, to our AO, to our kahea. You can go to the next slide, please. This is your response. Over 250,000 donors from 76 countries, and actually today, over $190 million coming to support, again, the people in place of Maui. Just over 8 months since the fires, we've distributed, if we can go to the next slide, please, nearly $90 million across multiple sectors. And I want to point out a couple very important areas that your resources had made significant impact. On the fourth column, up on the top side, children and family, over $2.3 million dedicated directly to this part of our community. Next box over on the top corner, more than $16.7 million in direct financial assistance given to the people in place of Maui. On the far left-hand side, second row, first column, over $3 million in food supplies given to our resource hubs, many of them, you know, Archie being involved with over in community. Next box over $4.4 million in healthcare. And the one I think really most important, and I know our governor and mayor will speak about it, fourth column down, second row, over $51.7 million in lodging and shelter. I mean, all of this work could not have been done without your direct support. And so I want you to know that you are truly making a difference. On the next slide, we show some of the work that's actually happening in the field. These are our grantees that are doing the work that we get to support on, again, your behalf. And if you can go to the drop into the chat box, you'll see a link that has a 6-month update that we would like you to when you have time to take a look at. It goes into a lot more detail about the work that we've done in partnership with the state of Hawaii, with the county of Maui, and with our community that, again, Archie has represents so well for us. So where do we go from here? First and foremost, Hawaii Community Foundation is committed for the long run to the people and place of Maui. Even beyond this disaster, we will be there for Maui. You will hear today from the leaders of our state that have collaborated and coordinated effectively. We're so proud of the work that they've done together. And while we've made tremendous progress, we have a lot in front of us. And, with that, I'll turn it back over to Michelle. But again, want to thank you for your support. And again, to our speakers, Governor, Mayor, and Archie, thank you for spending time with us this morning. Mahalo. I'll be there for the closeout of the webinar. I'll turn it over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Micah. It's really my honor to introduce to all of you Governor Josh Green. Governor, mahalo for taking the time to join us today. You have made Maui a priority in your administration, really rolling up your sleeves to support the thousands of community members who have been impacted. And so we want to mahalo you for the hard work, for you and the administration. And my first question for you really is if you could share with our attendees, what are some of the top issues facing Maui right now, and how are you working to address those?
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you everybody on the call. Before I even dive into the issues, I have to echo what Micah said. Mahalo to all of you, every single one of you who looked into your heart and you decided to help Hawaii recover. Thank you for that. It is incredible. And I can tell you, as a governor in his first year, when this crisis developed, there's no way we could have done what we're trying to do for people without this support. There's just no way. So mahalo to every single one of you for your generosity. And also thank you, Micah and team, for helping to be a lot of the glue that keeps all of us together, because we know the incredible work that the mayor's doing with so many, but it's very in the moment for a mayor, and even for me to a much less degree. So your support has made a big difference. So all of you, it's been amazing. So what are we dealing with? Housing comes to mind immediately. I mean, the single largest challenge we have, and there are many, when you have a natural disaster, which already compounded some difficult living circumstances for many who are living at or near poverty on Maui. Housing is a huge challenge for us. We had 3,991 structures destroyed by the fire. We had 561 individual families that were living and owned their property in Lahaina, and we had another 1,800 plus people who were renting, families that were renting. And so that was just gone. And it is really difficult in Hawaii to find housing when there's no crisis. But the housing crisis has been our largest challenge, probably, once people survived. And I just have to say that the resources that have come through HCF, obviously to be matched by lots of state resources and federal resources, are making it possible for people to find housing. A partnership with CNHA is extraordinary. They've put hundreds and hundreds of people into homes. And now we're able to partner with the mayor to actually build transitional housing. We've teed up 1,044 units, plus or minus, that are going to be built now with a lot of partners. I don't know how to say this without being somewhat emotional. The HCF community, driven by the very many people that stepped into this effort that I'm talking to today, you guys, that made it possible to take about $40 million additional housing monies and put it into a plan to build houses for families that otherwise could face years of housing uncertainty and housing instability. And that's an incredible thing to be able to work on with, with the team. The state put in immediately, I think it was $65 million, and that accelerated our ability to get families, little kids with keiki, into a place much sooner to stabilize their lives. And around every single project that we're doing, Michelle, having HCF there makes it a little bit easier, sometimes a lot easier, whether it was the school and getting people, some of the teachers and the workers' homes so that they could build the school. Maybe in that particular case, we got the money from the federal government, but we couldn't have actually done it without this coalition of support. So we're pressing very hard on housing for the moment now, and also we're looking out a year and 2 years when we just won't have the same kind of federal support, and we don't want to fall off a cliff. So we're trying to be very proactive. And so that's maybe the biggest one. And then I'd be remiss as a physician if I didn't say this, that the additional support for like childcare, behavioral health care is a very big deal. We had a lot of people that were facing circumstances of self-harm. I want to be blunt with people. We lost a few lives after the fire to suicide because of grief and loss and the impossible nature of dealing with what they had to. But HCF and this coalition came in with a lot of resources to help us put more healthcare into people's lives. And that made the ultimate difference. Grief counseling, all these things. So that's where I've been the last couple days and weeks as I've been thinking this through.
Thank you for that, Governor. As we talk about the top issues, housing and mental health, what are some of the lessons learned about our community, the impact of transitional housing has had on our own population, and what have been some of the surprising things that you've learned?
Well, one thing is we kind of pulled back the curtain with a crisis of this nature, which was exactly how vulnerable many people were. So much so, and I want to say this in a very supportive way of some of the people who have been even maybe at times our bigger detractors. Some people actually placed themselves onto the beach, even though they didn't lose their own home, because they felt so isolated from what is happening in Hawaii pre-fire and then during the fire when others lost their homes. They felt that we had to take a stand against the large number of houses that were occupied purely by tourism. And at first I had a difficult time understanding why that was such a push. And it didn't take long to see that people are truly struggling with their own existence in a place where it's what they love, it's their roots. It really is their pico, their center. And they couldn't even find a way to live here, or they were watching other friends that they loved not be able to afford to live here. So they protested, and appropriately so. And that taught us a lot. And that showed me that accelerating housing had to be the priority, because in many ways, housing is people's well-being in this circumstance. 101 of our loved ones were lost. A lot of people in Lahaina were cousins or children of those that were lost, but they also lost their community. And so rebuilding the community probably 2 years faster, maybe more, based on the amount of work and monies that are coming in from HCF. It will help a lot of people save and salvage their community. And that's, of course, I think where we're probably going to hear some of the thoughts, I'm guessing, from Archie. I haven't asked him if he's speaking about the impact of housing today, but we have to find our way again. And Archie speaks eloquently about that. That's what I learned, that people felt like Hawaii had lost its way to a degree. And it is extraordinary to watch it find its way through the disaster and through so many people from our community and around the world saying that they believe in Hawaii. And it's translated with real community. So that's what I learned. Also, for many years, I've been aware of how short we are on healthcare providers, just straight up short, about 40% short on the neighbor islands, which is Maui, Big Island, Kauai, and so on. And when you have a fire like this, and even the providers have to go to the wind, people had no services. Some of the clinics were burned down. it's extremely disruptive in people's lives who've just gone through probably the most traumatic event that they will ever face. So these were great places to put resources, in my opinion. Health and housing, those tend to be at the top of my list, and I think that that's reflected in what HCF and this team has done.
Absolutely agree with you, Governor. You know, many of us talk about the recovery of Maui, not in terms of where, you know, we refer to this as our marathon, not the sprint, that we know that this is going to be a long haul, that the unprecedented devastation that we've witnessed in West Maui. So as you think 2 to 3 years out, what are you seeing as the greatest challenges that we'll have to overcome? If we fast forward 2 years from now, where do you see those critical challenges to be?
Well, I think we have to deliver. I think today we are at about 8 months and 1 week since the fire, and extraordinary things have happened. I mean, over 70% of the people are back into long-term housing. That is actually amazing. But we have to deliver on these promises of building community again, building resources for kids. Like the school was very important. I think that it has to actually even go to a new level. I think we have to restore trust. There's been a great deal of loss of trust historically, not just Hawaii, in government and in communities where people feel left behind. And I think that has to be reversed completely. So in 2 years, what I would like to see is I'd like to see 2,000 transitional houses already built and another 2,000 permanent houses on the way. I would like to see the clinics rebuilt. I would like to see large pieces of the land restored to the Lahaina community in a way that is respectful of culture. And that's something that we're being guided by HCF and some of like Ulupono and some of the other organizations that work closely with us. I think we have to have these palpable results for the community. And I honestly think that we have to listen and be informed by what their greatest concerns were before the fire and act on them. This is not the time or place for that kind of like conversation, perhaps, but I think that the HCF support and the donations are giving us room to maneuver to build on those promises that we have to deliver on, and to give us a little breathing room to change structurally some of the things that were really hurting Hawaii. And that's a very big blessing. I want people to know that. You know, people should know that their resources bought us some time to actually address these larger issues. And so we have to deliver these next couple years. We should try the best of our ability to get all 13,000 people, if they want to continue to live in West Maui, back. And we should try to make sure that anyone who was harmed or hurt is, you know, given a full ability to heal. And we're all working on that. So that's what I would see. And we'll be able to measure it. You know, we can measure how many houses we build. We can measure how many people are able to come back. We can measure how many of our keiki are able to go to Lahaina Luna High School. So I hope that we'll be able to report back to this community with whatever cadence you guys think is best, because they should know, everyone should know that it's a big deal that people helped, but also that we can show results.
Thank you, Governor. I think it's really important. I love you sharing some really definitive and hard numbers that what you would like to see. I think it's very important for all of us to understand and to keep. There's a huge fear in community that as we get further away from that August 8th date, that there's less momentum, and that we have to constantly keep this recovery at the top of mind so that we don't instill in those impacted the fear that we forget, right? That this is definitely top of mind for all of us. And these are big numbers and big ambitions for where we need to be. And so I appreciate you putting context to that. With that said, I'm going to move us over to the mayor. And I just want to say that over the last 8 or so months, it has been really an honor and a privilege for me to get to know Mayor Rick Bisson a little bit better. And just, I'm struck by his generous heart and his aloha for his people, and to really be alongside on a journey with a leader who has centered his community and is really committed to following their lead. And so it's an honor, Mayor, to bring you to the conversation and just thank you for all that you've been doing on Maui. We thought that you could share some insights into when the disaster first struck, where we are now, and where we're going in this recovery. So I'm gonna leave it at that and leave it open-ended for you to kind of show us where your insights on where we first started and where we are today.
First of all, mahalo, Michelle, Micah, Hawaii Community Foundation. Thank you so much, Gov, for sharing those insights and all of the support you continue to give us. I would also be remiss if I didn't start by thanking all those on this webinar who have contributed in many ways, big or small, that all of it has mattered and is counted. As the recipient of that in our island, I want you to know how much gratitude we have and appreciation for that. Many of you have made sacrifices to help others, in many cases strangers, and we are grateful and thankful. I think I want to start a little bit about talking about how our community has come together and shown the resilience and the aloha for each other. And I think I can do that maybe in capturing a couple of stories early on in this matter. The first one comes to mind is one of our county workers, Mike Tihara, who works for our Public Works Division, and he was the person who opened up the first shelter on the west side in Lahaina at the Lahaina Civic Center, and that he went there with a crew to open up, even though there was no power, no water, no flushing toilets. It was a site that we used for our emergencies, and he was able to stand that up for us, even while his own family's homes were being destroyed. And so he stayed there. He stayed there until we had to close that location because of the fire threatening there. And he led that group out to Kapalua, out to the school on that side, Maui Academy, and was able to get folks there. He was also able, it's an interesting story because I think it's sort of important. We have one satellite phone that I have assigned to the mayor's office, and we had our worker take it out to Lahaina with them in case we lost communication because there were no cell phones working. And he was able to get that to Mike, and Mike drove that out with the group to Kapalua so that any of the folks staying out there would be able to make contact with their families or friends who were outside of that area whose cell phones were working. So I just have a lot of aloha from Mike, putting it on the line like that. And again, thanks to the help of those on this call, he's doing better. He's one of 76 county employees who lost their homes. And so there are direct benefits being provided for people who are not only workers, but also survivors at the same time. I also would highlight the work of Officer Cameron Pupunu, Officer Calvin Don. Both of those gentlemen are credited with saving the lives of 15 people who were trapped in a coffee shop. Even though while that was going on, Officer Pupunu lost 4 family members in the fire himself. Again, these are all people who were county workers working during that day. So there's also a firefighter. His name is Tanner Mosier. Some of you may know him from the stories that were told, but he's the firefighter. Their truck was trapped into the fire and they were going to perish. He took a chance, left the vehicle, went out and got an abandoned police vehicle, brought it back, saved 7 members of his unit, and drove them out of the fires. So those are some of the examples, I think, of people who have shown not only a heart for their community and to help their community and different members, but also that were county workers, people who, regular everyday people who show up for work, who continue to show up for work since this has all happened. So some of the lessons learned from that is that we have a group or a community that binds together, a community that we show families helping families, strangers helping neighbors, people coming together, setting up groups like what Archie did at his home, setting up hubs for people. Yeah, I think the community, what's impressed me the most is the community coming together at a time like this. And then, of course, all the support that was brought in, that was eventually distributed among the community, is probably what I'll remember the strongest. I could go on and on with examples, but I think you get the point that a lot of ordinary people did extraordinary things.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm always amazed in a time of crisis that it is such a natural thing for our communities to pull together, and watching what happened on Maui, regardless of the destruction. And we talk about this unprecedented disaster, that the coming together of our communities is always inspiring. And so thank you for sharing. Following those early days of really emergency response, could you tell us a little bit about sort of the progress to date? Because inside all of this destruction and the chaos that we saw in the early days, there have been some amazing accomplishments that have happened. The governor shared a little bit, but maybe you could give us a little bit about some of the progress to date and sort of what's happening now.
Sure, I'd love to follow up on what Gov said earlier. So we had nearly 8,000 people at approximately 46 hotels at the height of our emergency. I'm happy to say that as of last night or yesterday, we're down to 2,287 people at 10 sites. And that makes up about 898 households. So we're tracking those numbers, trying to get people into more long-term housing rather than emergency hotel housing. And we're very grateful to all the hotels who stepped up and helped to fill that void. Our debris cleanup is another milestone or measurement. So as of late, we have cleared 661 of the residential properties. That's about half of the residential properties that were destroyed and impacted. As Governor pointed out, some were owner occupied, some were being rented out to renters. Of those 661, 237 of those have already been turned back over to the county, and we've given about 100 of those back to the homeowners. And the reason I point that all out is now we're at that stage where we can give permits to people, and there'll be two kinds of permits: a temporary dwelling or a permanent dwelling. And people will have to see which they want to apply for. It'll depend on several factors. What we're still dealing with is the assessment of our infrastructure, and mostly that's wastewater. But you need water, power, as well as wastewater to get a placard that says you're good to go back to your property. So those are the things we're trying to work on. And like I said, those are encouraging numbers. And that 661 was just over 93 days, 94 days that it took to clear those lots. So everyone has been working very hard, round the clock, really, 6-7 days a week, 10-hour days, crews just getting in and out of there. So very encouraging.
Awesome. That's really great to hear. I know there's a lot of excitement on the ground by families who are able to return to their lots that are cleared. There's excitement about what's possible. My last question for you before we turn to Archie is, what do you see as the next big phase of this recovery? Where do you see the county going next? I know clearing the lots, we're still focusing on housing, but any other areas of huge significance that you think are part of the next phase of recovery?
Sure. I think partly like what the governor's already mentioned, but I think there are lots of ways to measure success in an ordeal like this. The way I will measure the success is whether or not we get the original Lahaina residents back to their lots and back to their land, back to their homes, whatever that looks like going forward. I really feel like that's the measurement of success. It's not just putting up a building or putting up a park or restoring power. It's about restoring the heart of the community. It's not about restoring the buildings. The buildings are the physical sign that you can see and look at. But what we really want, and what we're shooting for is to have those folks that were there before return back to Maui if they moved off island, return to Lahaina if they moved out of Lahaina. So that's really what we're looking to do, and that's what we're hoping to measure success by. There are the other nuts and bolts that have to happen. We need clean water. We need functioning, infrastructure, wastewater. We're getting a lot of help. What I learned throughout this process is it's all been about relationships that we formed with our partners, federal, state, other counties, you folks, NGOs. It's been about resources, which we've talked a bit about already. That's an obvious thing that we need. But the third one is resilience. And that's the piece that I think Gov talked about, where we need to build trust, we need to build hope, and of course, we need to build homes. But I think it's all about us restoring the heart of Lahaina. That's the measurement.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Appreciate the conversation. I'm gonna turn us now to, as we talked a little bit about where we started, what's happening now. I really want to bring forward Archie Kalepa. Many of you have heard Archie speak on a number of different occasions, perhaps about Maui and what's happening as a result of the wildfire, but he is really a legendary waterman and a community leader from Lahaina, where he has roots going back several generations. And so mahalo for being here, Archie. I'm going to turn it over to you. You've spoken so eloquently about the path ahead for Lahaina, as well as a sale plan guided by community values. Just want to ask you what you think makes Lahaina the special place that it is, and how do you see the Lahaina community moving forward together?
Thank you, Michelle. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the Hawaii Community Foundation for allowing or giving us the help that we need for the things that not necessarily government or others can provide. You guys have been a tremendous help, a tremendous resource to helping this community, which in turn helps our state. So I just want to say thank you very much. You know, this whole situation that we're going through and what this community can become is it's open book. It's a blank sheet of paper. And so what does that mean for this community? What does that look like? I will say this. At one point, this community, and it was fractured, but this community is in a place of rebuilding not only its place, but it's ourselves. And through that, we've allowed ourselves to come even more closer together and to begin to have ideas and to have discussions about how do we rebuild our community. I think has been really, really important to how we move forward. You know, where do we begin? Where do we begin to put a finger on the things that have happened to this community and the changes that need to happen so that this never happens again, not only for us, but for the rest of the state? Those are tough questions. So I don't know if I can really answer that right now, but I will say this, that the little wins that we've had as a community has turned into big outcomes. Right now, we are in a place where we can begin to measure our successes. We're in the beginning stages of being able to measure that, like the governor said, but now we can begin to measure those successes. Housing being the most important thing, but we must never forget where we are as a state and the challenges that we have ahead in regards to climate change, and how is that going to affect our community. There's a lot of things that are happening right now.
Yeah. Speaking of, the unity and the way that your community has pulled together, geographically, Lahaina is such a small place, but clearly it has made an impact on people, and in turn, the world has really embraced and shown their love for the Lahaina community. What is it like from your perspective as a community member working hand in hand with your community to see the world show up for Maui the way it has?
Well, there's something very special about Lahaina. A lot of people have never left. They're multi-generational. Even if they became a renter and not homeowners, they're multi-generational. So there's deep pride in this community. There's also an international acceptance to this community. We see a lot of different people that live in Lahaina that have fallen in love with Lahaina, have fallen in love with the people, and want to be a part of this place. And in that sense, we're really, really lucky because it's allowed us to build a community that everybody loves and everybody's a part of and everybody contributes to, and everybody just loves this place to a point where it puts a lot of hardship on how much we do love this place, and sometimes becomes confrontational. But in the end, it's all about protecting the resources, protecting what we have, so that everybody can enjoy the love that we have for place, and especially this place we call home, Lahaina.
Thank you, Archie. There are lots and lots of questions coming in, so I'm gonna start to put some of these questions that are in the chat and give you folks a chance to be able to respond. First and foremost, like while there has been a lot of conversation around housing and mental health and where people are at, there's a question about what are we talking about in terms of businesses, so that what is the thought around rebuilding the commercial community in Lahaina? Some of the former buildings don't conform with code and setbacks. Any update or any comments that anybody can give about what that might look like for the future?
I can start if you want. I can start if you want, and then toss it over to Gov or anybody else. So right now our focus has been on our residential side of the equation. But we have not forgotten our small businesses and those folks. We do meet with that side of it. We have so we have 6 areas of recovery following the FEMA model, support functions, just so everyone understands. Those functions include community planning, infrastructure, housing, cultural and natural resources, health and mental health included, and economy. So we have support functions of people. So our Office of Economic Development, Luana Mahi, she is the lead on that. And we have offered loans thanks to the governor and other agencies. We have offered small business loans to our folks. SBA has been on the ground. So we have offered financial assistance. Now, some people are a little reluctant because they still may be paying COVID loans. And there are other reasons. So I know there are things being looked at to try to see if we can address that. But we have not forgotten. This question is actually 2-part. The second part is more of a zoning question. How can someone rebuild when there's been rezoning? Again, what we hope to do is have our Office of Recovery and our community planning folks sit down with our economy folks and try to work that out. That's going to require input from the business community. It's going to require having those meetings. Right now, our focus has been on residential. This Saturday, we have a meeting with the Kilauea Malka community, trying to discuss that. So we haven't forgotten it. It's on our list of things to do. Gov, I'm sorry if there's anything to add.
No, it's great. Yeah, as Mayor pointed out, debris clearance is actually, yes, prioritized for people's residential space. It's also critically important for, as he and I have shared with each other many times, our businesses. Some of the industrial sites are a little bit more complicated, just to be direct, to clean them out. Some of the chemicals are a little more difficult. And so everything is a priority. We're pushing hard, but those sites are going to need to be, they're going to need to be accelerated too, as soon as we can. We put a lot more teams out there because Mayor and AIMA and the Army Corps working so closely together. Some questions will have to get answered as to what can actually be rebuilt where it was. And that will speak to a larger question of community. And that's a place where we will be partnered with others. We haven't, for instance, today mentioned someone who's close to us, KS, Kamehameha Schools is great. They're an extraordinary piece of Hawaii, and they're doing a lot of thought leadership with us too about land and where we can kind of reshape this community. The mayor's embarked on some of those early discussions and had one. There are a lot of discussions all the time, but had a big one yesterday or the day before with the community. And some properties will probably have to come off the ocean, and if they lose access to their own value, we'll have to find ways to make them whole and to give them additional land or additional capacity to build out a business. That's going to be the discussion of a large and series of large, actually, settlements that will happen simply because we do honestly care about every single business and person and family that lost anything during the fire. Those won't be easy discussions to have, but some are just realities. Like, we're not going to be able to build, I don't think, Kamehameha, the third school, right where it was. We all agree, because sooner or later, waves will take that land. But maybe there are better things that can be done right in that area. And perhaps it would be appropriate to even maybe hand off to you, Archie, to talk about things like returning the land and moku'ula and such.
Yeah, I'd like to tap into that. You know, one of the things that living in Lahaina, even till today, I drive down Front Street at least once a week, twice a week, and looking at Front Street and seeing the erosion that's happening from sea level rising, climate change. There is going to be those hard discussions about setback. And what is that going to look like, and how is that going to affect some of the businesses? But more importantly, it's how do we change the landscape of this community for the better? And that's the hard question that we have to ask. And there is areas like Camp Third School, which is already in the tsunami zone, that if there was a tsunami while school is in session, it could be catastrophic. And so those kinds of changes have to happen. But those areas can become, we have a big problem. We've had this problem for like 4 years, the overuse of Mala Boat Ramp, which is a recreational ramp, which has now turned into a recreational / commercial ramp. And it's affecting the community, both good and bad. And so there might be an opportunity where we take a third of Kamehameha School's Camp Third School land, DOE land, and turn it over to the DLNR so that they can create trailer parking and reopen the old ramp at Lahaina Harbor, where all commercial activity can take place in one place. Moku'ula, that whole shoreline, which is adjacent to Kamehameha Schools, is so important moving forward to bringing back Hawaii's history, Lahaina's history, that, today's tourists, when they come to Hawaii, they're not coming here for sunset tours, Mai Tais. They want to be educated about the real history of Lahaina. We have an opportunity to set that tone, to re-engage with that kind of true history of Lahaina and bringing that forward. These are important key places that can make that happen. And for the betterment of the longevity of the Hawaiian Islands, Hawaii, its state, and right now, more importantly, this community.
Yeah,
Can I just add one thing? forecast it, and thanks to the help of Gov dealing with FEMA, ordinarily during these disasters, the Army Corps will only clean up residential lots. In this case, Gov was able to negotiate with FEMA that they will also clean out commercial business areas as well. And that was something they ordinarily wouldn't have done. So again, that I hope will bring businesses back online sooner. Sorry, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I wanted to just add, so I think there's been a huge crowd and there's also several questions about the historical significance of Lahaina and Moku'ula. And Governor, I just wanted to turn this over to you because I know many have asked about the commitment around restoration, and you've talked about a cultural corridor. If you want to talk a little bit about that and how you're working with community on what might happen.
Yes, first, I was only going to make a small correction of what Archie said, because sometimes I actually need a Mai Tai when he's educating me about the necessity of the cultural corridor. So let's be honest, we're going to share some of that, those mixed experiences in Hawaii. But, you know, all teasing aside, it is so important because what's happened here is for the better part of like 50 years or more, there's just an incredible demand and love for all of Hawaii, but specifically in this case, Lahaina. And it's meant so many people have come, and development has occurred in some areas that was stayed, and things that we treasured are not there, and not for the benefit even of the travelers. We had things like tennis courts and this and that went into places that were special and actually sacred. And so the Moku'ula opportunity to have, you know, the simple words are cultural corridor. The real words are restoring, and I'll take from what HCF is working on, restoring the soul of this community. For those of you who have supported that the HEC and Hawaii Community Foundation, we are working towards a better understanding of what the soul of Hawaii is. Much credit to Micah and Dwayne Karisu and Mayor and all these guys. Archie's been a part of that, Michelle. The soul matters, and restoring this area, which is extraordinary, which was driven by the natural waters. It's more than just a practical, important thing to put back. It is actually symbolic of the way Hawaii survived and thrived for generations. And so doing that will have a very outsized positive value for people who are coming back to their sense of Hawaii, I think. Local people, also people who have loved Hawaii for many decades and traveled here. And I think that it's very interesting. It's not a big expense. It's more of just a commitment. Many things in this recovery take resources and people's work and so on. That's going to take just our commitment to do that. And if we do that, I think that all of the panelists today and many people who love Hawaii, probably everybody on this call, will see that helps us bridge the gap towards where we have to go to recover. Because it's not going to be perfect, if I may. We're not going to be able to build just like everyone wants in Lahaina. Even if we wanted to, we probably couldn't. We're not going to be able to make everyone feel like everything they lost has been restored, especially those who lost a loved one. But if we can restore that sense of purpose, which was, I believe, what, as it's been described to me by Keimoku and others, as the purpose of generations gone past, you know, in the past, it will really mean a lot to the people of Maui. And they will show how much it means to the rest of the world. So I think that's going to be a really big deal. And stay tuned on that, because we're making sure that we really hear from those who have worked on this since, I think, like 1962, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time. But as Archie shared earlier, quite intelligently, this is in some ways, it is a blank canvas opportunity, right? That was a very thoughtful statement that Archie made, because it gives us that opportunity, which we somehow didn't have maybe in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Now some good things are going to happen because of all this work that's going on in partnership.
I'd like to say something real quick in regards to Moku'ula is, you know, and this is, for me, I think this is a spiritual belief, is that once we restore Moku'ula, the biggest problem facing Lahaina today is and it's going to be the biggest problem facing all of Hawaii moving forward, is water. And if we can restore Moku'ula, it's going to allow us to have a pulse or be a thermometer of the resources that we have in Lahaina, because now we can see it, it's visible. And it's restoring that will allow us to maintain a degree of understanding of what the water resources are in Lahaina.
Mhm.
And I think that's super important. So I think, but there's some things that need to happen legislatively on even in the DC level. One of the things restoring Moku'ula, there needs to be some discussion about it not being turned over to a fish sanctuary. This place is a church for our people. This place is a historical place that needs to be recognized as such, and not provide the resources for water because it can be turned in. It would fall under the umbrella of a bird sanctuary. The other thing is there's a lot of historical things that has happened to Lahaina to present. And so there should be an opportunity to create a museum that can sustain and people can come and visit and can generate revenue to support Moku'ula and to support Lahaina Town. I mean, the fire, you look at 9/11 and you look at their museum and what they have, and people go and pay a visit to this place. We can do the same to help our economy in Lahaina.
And Michelle, if I may, that's I appreciate Archie sharing that, because this once again is one of the blessings that we have from those who are calling in today, and what HCF has been able to do by bringing this, this $190+ million to the community. A lot of the traditional things about recovery will be done, of course, by the mayor and me and others, but so many other things that are in many ways as important, or maybe even more important, are going to be significantly helped by all of the people who loved and love Maui and have helped this way. So once again, probably should have even started with that earlier in the hour. I probably should have mentioned that there's incredible extra flexibility and capacity to do things that we've only dreamed of for a long time. You'll guide us. I know that the people who are donors will guide us, because we're trying to deliver important structural things. That's very important, I think, palpable things. But believe me, these are very palpable positives for the people of Lahaina, more than we probably can express in an hour.
Yeah, and my apologies, because we're getting a little bit of comments in the Q&A area that not everyone is aware. So we're going to drop, if somebody from HCF can drop a Moku'ula resource, Friends of Moku'ula, maybe into the chat so that people who are not aware. But really quickly, Moku'ula is a tiny island in Lahaina that was the actual residence of King Kamehameha III in between 1837 and 1845, and is the burial site of several of our royal arali'i that were moved later. But essentially, it is an important piko and sort of an energy and cultural center of Lahaina and for Hawaii. And it has been buried under a baseball field for many, many years. And so as we talk about in Hawaiian culture that the health of the land is synonymous to the health of the people, that as we think about rebuilding Lahaina and restoring the faith and the hope in our community and people, as we do that, as we uncover and we appreciate Moku'ula and the significant historical and cultural context that it has for people here in Hawaii, that healing is both to our land and to our individual community members. And so we'll drop a little link to the Friends of Moku'ula, who is no longer an active nonprofit, but I'm very inspired by the conversations around this being an important part of recovery and that piko of Lahaina, that the conversations are continuing on how this is part and parcel to the recovery. So we're about 4 minutes outside the hour, but I'm gonna just a couple more, like just two more questions maybe. First is like, do we know what an estimate? We've heard several numbers thrown around. It's 10 billion. I don't know if governor or mayor, there are any thoughts. There are several questions about, do we have an estimate about what this total dollar amount is? Because 190 million feels like a lot of money. And it really is a small fraction, which is why we're trying to be so careful about how we leverage that where government can't reach, because this is a huge price tag. So any thoughts about what we're estimating the total recovery cost to be?
I can share, and I'll be succinct. There's a lot of numbers out there. It's clear how many houses we have to build, and that is in the thousands, right? There are at least 2,500 residences that are gone. Much of that will be covered by insurance. Other pieces will be covered, through settlement. The settlement itself, which is not, of course, the responsibility at all of donors or the Hawaii Community Foundation. That settlement is being worked on as we speak. It's going to be somewhere between $3 and $10 billion, and that's a wide range. I acknowledge that, but it really depends on ultimately what happens with the cause of the fire and how people settle it. But I will tell you this, though, the $40 million, for example, that was put toward housing to help us do our project between the state and the county, that immediately is going to create 450 houses that are transitional. So you can see how impactful $40 million, let alone $190 million can be. It will get us through the transition phase. As we build the other houses, that will mostly be from dollars that come from state and county and perhaps Kamehameha Schools and the energy company and so on. We may, and I will defer to Micah and others in the future, if people want to give, of course, we will accept help and build houses for people that have lost. But I don't want people to worry about those kind of large numbers. This is an incredibly impactful amount of money raised to help us get people through this, basically this 2-year window of transition.
Thank you. Thank you, Gov. Micah, I'm going to bring you back to close us out, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, I first want to thank all of our panelists here for their partnership, their leadership, their friendship, their mentorship, their leaning in on everything. It's been a tremendous journey to work side by side with you folks. And thank you for including HCF as a partner in our leadership. And Michelle, I know you share those sentiments. But ultimately, today is about our donors and everyone who has leaned in and stepped up to really support the people in place of Maui. I want to thank you for sharing your resources with us, for giving us the privilege to work on your behalf. We thank you for being here. We thank you for staying on this journey with us. Please stay tuned for other updates as we go forward. But again, just a deep, deep mahalo and thank you for your support. With that, on behalf of everybody who's part of this call, have a great, great end of week and a great weekend. Be safe and mahalo. Aloha, everyone.